that, let's call our, Robert, are you running Teams or is Kat running Teams? I don't have my station up.
I'm on Teams for the purpose of scrolling through the...
Is there any reason why I should pull it up?
I plan to show what we're talking about.
Okay, good. Okay, with that, we'll call the October 18, 2021 Cass County Redistricting Board meeting to order. All right, basically what we're doing is we've had a massive population shift here in Cass County. Obviously, most of the members of this board and the people viewing understand that Cass County has been booming over the last handful of years, and that continues from my election up until this day, and I presume it will not change. But the intent of that is, of this meeting again, is to adjust based on the population, the census that has just been put out. This board is not required to act today necessarily. I don't think we should, by the way, but I don't know if we can. We have to have a public meeting. But long story short, you have been given a list, or sort of you should have a good understanding through the letter previously of what the way our district is laid out right now. Maybe I should back up. Cass County Commissioners must reside in the district they run for, but they are elected at large. So everyone in the county has a chance to vote for any one of the commissioners. However, you must live within the district you choose to represent. Based on the population shifts, we need to adjust how these districts are shaped, the way they are laid out, to account for an equal distribution of the population. And that within the packet you received prior via email. We had 6 layouts put together by our wonderful staff in GIS. Thank you for that, making this a heck of a lot easier than it would have been 20 years ago, 30 years ago, where I don't know how they would have done it, frankly, but they would have managed. And that's not to say or presuppose any one of these is the exact answer, but for sake of argument, I think there are probably a couple in here that are pretty solid, but for sake of argument, we wanted to make sure we had a good idea of what could be if we so chose as a committee, and then based on input from the public, we could choose a goodly number of these. So with that, we are guided by the North Dakota State Century Code, and maybe Mr. Wilson or Mr. Burdick, do you want to run through that? What's the best procedure? Maybe Mr. Wilson run through the Century Code and what we have to do, what I have missed.
Well, I was, Mr. Chair, members of the board, welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your service. Certainly would do that. I would open this.
For clarification, who makes up the board?
That
Just 3 or 4 or 5?
can I Taylor, could we open with a roll call, and then we'll do a little bit of an explanation.
Sure. Okay, so Commissioner Peterson.
I am here.
Mr. Burdick.
Present.
Mayor Mahoney.
Here.
Mayor Peterson. And Supervisor Godes.
Modus.
Oh,
yes.
Godes, sorry. So that's the board.
Very good. Yeah, a little background here, and that's where we have an explanation of the process. This is guided by statute, and it is, there are 5 members of the County Redistricting Board by statute. That is the chair of the County Commission. It is the state's attorney. It is an appointee of the largest municipality in the county, Fargo. Traditionally, that has been the mayor of Fargo, and I reached out to city administration a number of months ago and was informed that that Mayor Mahoney would be the representative. And then in addition, the other municipalities in the county meet and appoint a representative, and that happened in June. And Mayor Corey Peterson from Horace was appointed, and then Supervisor Godes was appointed by township representatives that attended a separate meeting the same night, where they had a briefing and made that choice. So you, as the 5 of you, are the members of the County Redistricting Board. So I have included the statute, applicable statute, at the back of the packet that runs through in detail a rather specific process of how this work must proceed. The first point, and the reason that we're here today, is within 3 months of final results of the census, the chair of the county commission is required to call this board together and take a look at the current commission districts and their population as of the most recent census. Mr. Burdick, I'm happy to continue going through the process unless there was something of a more nuanced or finer legal point that you wanted to go to explain.
Please go ahead.
Okay, we'll continue. And just have tried to lay out this agenda in kind of a logical progression of what's required by the statute. And in addition to requiring that the commission chair call this meeting within three months of the census information, the first determination that this board needs to make is to, again, take a look at the current population of the various districts and determine if any of those populations vary by more than 10%. And then if they do vary by more than 10%, then you must determine that redistricting is required. So that is the one and only charge that you have today. I'm going to proceed past this agenda page very shortly and show you what the current populations are of each of the current districts, and I think it's fairly apparent, but that is a determination that you have to make if redistricting is required. So that would be there would be some follow-up steps that happen after that. So again, thanks to the hard work of our GIS team here at Cass County, this is the most recent census, 2020 census, and the population by district, and how that current population compares to the average that is being judged against. And I'll take a quick moment, just the way this average is determined and what the actual data is being measured against is the 2020 total population for Cass County is 184,525 residents. So we have 5 county commissioners that represent the full county. Each commission district should represent 1/5 of that, or 36,905 individuals. That would be a absolute averaged population for each district. So the actual population in each district is shown in black right under the district number, and then that number is a percentage. The percentage difference from the average is the number in red shown below that. So for example, District 3 has a population 33,981, or 7.29% below the average. If all of the districts were within that tolerance, you notice that bottom number is in black where all the others are in red. If that population district was reflected in all the other districts and at 7.9%, 0.2% below the average, we wouldn't need to redistrict. You look at the other 4, and they are more than 10% away from that average number, that average population. So that is, statutorily, that's what triggers the need to redistrict. But again, it is in statute, it's not so much just a mathematical equation. You, as the county redistricting board, number one, have to determine, is redistricting required? So again, believe it's a rather straightforward determination, but you have to make that determination based on the information in front of you.
And the answer is yes. Maybe talk about the deviation we can have from the mean.
Sure. And I would, I guess because it is prescribed in statute, I would look for a roll call if you wanted to determine if redistricting is required.
Well, I think, so the baseline understanding is if we deviate more than 20% in each one, it is required by law that we have to redistrict, correct?
10%.
So let's touch, and that's what the deviation from the mean. I thought we had a spread within, I just talked about this, and maybe I misunderstood you. I thought because of, touch on the deviation, I thought it was 20%.
Sure. And I think I was initially mistaken in my individual description to you. I had a follow-up conversation with Mr. Burdick that if all of the districts were either 9.9% below the average or 9.9% above the average, you would then have a spread of 19.98. You would not have a requirement to redistrict there. The spread would be 20%, but you would not have a 10% or greater difference from that population to the average.
Okay, and that's
Makes sense.
what confused me. So when
Yeah.
you and I last spoke, it was that 20, which struck me dumb. I'm like, holy gosh, that's
Yeah.
a heavy swing. But we were theorizing how we got here was that the rural districts might have to do that because math. But so that's incorrect.
And what I just described to you in my mind would have been almost virtually a 20% spread.
Yep.
And I initially read the statute to say a 10% spread was the limit,
Yeah, so
which
5
would
and
be
5.
5 up, 5 down. I was incorrect, and so
Okay.
that's where why the determination is as it is on this map.
Okay, so committee members, you have before you the current population per district. We can see deviations in District 1, I believe you have it up right now, of 11, then 20%, 9%, 7.92%, 23%, and then 17, almost 16% in the District 5 area. The commission would need to make a motion to adjust if we see the need to do so.
So
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion for redistricting or the investigation of redistricting? If not, let's do a roll call, Taylor, please.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
Commissioner Mr. Burdick?
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney? And Supervisor, how did you say it was?
Notice.
Godus.
Motion passes. We have chosen we need to reapportion our borders of our districts.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Now, moving forward from that, we can go a couple of different directions. I would like to just go through the options with you, and perhaps, again, no action is required at this point. In fact, we need to provide notice before this board can act. We will need to call another meeting of this board when we will ask you to act. But again, in preparation for your upcoming action, our GIS group has developed a number of options that you may wish to consider, and if you want to discuss those options or ask questions about those options, we have representatives of County GIS, myself available, and would be happy to answer any questions, and then leave you with some information to ponder and options to consider when we meet again.
Mr. Wilson, touch on the notice. We have 30-day in our packet. Do we need 30-day public notice?
Well, again, this is subject of conversation you and myself and State Attorney Burdick were having just a moment before we got started. And I am not a lawyer, and so occasionally I
But I know one.
try to understand statute and what it means that we are required to do. And in this case, you'll see on the agenda, I say that a 30-day notice is required prior to the public meeting. There is a 30-day requirement there. I have been informed, and I'm grateful for that, that my reference was wrong in that. So we need a 10-day notice before you meet again and consider action on one of these options. That 30-day notice refers to filing of the report that at the end of this process, you, Chair Peterson, will draft and file with the county finance director describing the ultimate work of this committee and the redistricting map that may be adopted. So that was the point of confusion there. As we discussed, we certainly could provide 30-day notice prior to that meeting when new districts are considered and give folks plenty of time to weigh in and share their opinions with the four of you and Mayor Peterson. But that's the nuance that we were just discussing. There's a 10-day notice when you will come back and consider the options that we are looking at now, or instruct myself and county staff that you don't like these options and you want us to find other options.
I think that, just for also clarification, we have to be done with this by the end of the year. Ideally, I think we can finish this in the month of November, before the chair, in theory, switches to someone else. So it wouldn't be the end of the world, but it'd be logistically much easier to keep me as chair through this process. So I would like to get this done prior to the first meeting in December, where I presumably will no longer be chair. I think 2 years is probably enough for me to be chair in a row. So committee members, any questions regarding the process and why we're actually here?
I understand exactly why we're here. They've taught social studies for a whole career. How much, consideration to the changes? I'm curious. I've seen 4 or 5 options here of the people that set that up. What kind of population guidelines or geographical guidelines did they use to? Obviously, you can see the one district, and I need some information about that.
We have our team members here that compiled this. Kay Anderson is our director of GIS, I suppose. I don't know what your title is. I've just called you Kay for so long. But our friends in GIS were able to magically manipulate these boundaries once the census was taken. And I guess I call them polylines. I guess I don't know what you use to push and pull. But could you explain, and if I understand your question correctly, sir, could you explain how did you do your job? When you gave us a bunch of examples, how did you get there?
Sure, and Trevor did most of the hard work, so I will let him fill you in on what he did. But just an overview of that, we discussed with Robert how we were going to approach this, and he wanted us to come up with some options. That one of them was an extreme option, which was option E, so that we looked at the big variance in the percentages. And then the option H, we looked at going more horizontal with the districts. And then the N, which was the north one, we wanted to extend that further north of the metro. The Q option was based on quadrants. The V option was vertical, and in all of these, I'm referring to the shape of the districts at this time. And then the Y option was by year, and that one we were looking at the age that the subdivisions were platted and recorded, being as that influences you know, the age of the population, the stability of the population generally. Newer subdivisions is where you're going to see your growth in population. We also were taking into consideration township lines and, as much as possible, major roads, rivers. City limits were not really straight enough for us to follow, and they change so frequently, so we tended to shy away from the city limits. Same with the school boundaries as well. But primarily, we wanted, based on, you know, our understanding and our knowledge of growth in the area, we realized that Horace is going to be one of our bigger growth areas, so we wanted to leave enough room within those numbers for that to grow within the next 10 years. Whereas when you look at your downtown districts, you know, near the metro, especially the older downtown area, we don't foresee big changes in those areas as well. So,
Perfect. Does that help explain how we got there?
There's a couple of preface to this is that I live in Mapleton, but I represent township supervisors from north, west, and south of the city proper. And obviously, you've been at our meetings and you know about the road contentions, the perceptions that are there about, you know, trying to, you know, have adequate representation of rural interests. You know, shape of roads is the main thing. And the perception is that they've been, I'm sure, very good representatives, but they come from what their perception is city proper, you know, from right south of the. So when this all started, you know, there were conversations about, you know, is there going to be, what are the maps going to look like to, you know, because we know where the growth area is, obviously, Horace, that Eagle Run and all those, but, you know, how is the rural area of Cass County going to, you know, fare and what the redistricting is. So gerrymandering, I don't think, obviously, that would play a part as, you know, what the North legislature's been famous for is trying to put incumbents running against each other and things like that. I don't think that ended in based on what she was talking about. So townships, really that doesn't play a part in this, does it? There's not enough population.
no, not really. I mean, those lines exist, but we didn't really take those into consideration. I think more of for us, the way we looked at it was we want to keep those boundaries as neat as possible if we can, meaning the roads as the actual bounding lines, but the actual census population is the thing that drove us to this answer. I mean, those were the two things we probably were top of our list.
Yeah.
Trevor, I don't know if I missed anything, because I know you were deep in this for a while.
Yeah, and I think in all the options, districts 1 through 4 are entirely Fargo and West Fargo and maybe Prairie Rose. There's one of them that maybe goes a little farther north. But should District 5 be mostly the rural parts of the county? Is that something that?
So that's something that we can discuss. I think the reality is, though, that no matter how you played this, the rural area doesn't have enough people. So you're going to be in the urban core. And I think the defense has always been, in my mind anyway, that's why we're all elected at large, so that we had to be held accountable to everybody. When things become parochial, like ward systems like they have over in Moorhead, I think it becomes, I don't know if I do not like ward systems necessarily, because then you tend to become very siloed. The only person I care about is 17th Street to 18th Street, you know, that little block. So you become this advocate for that. Well, that works at a state legislative level, but when you're talking about advocating for, you know, a handful of people, like over in Moorhead, I'm not a fan of that. So I don't know how you could have a rural district necessarily. And I frankly don't think you should have it. My opinion is you shouldn't have one. The rationale is, again, you have an equal distribution of the population, and yeah, the geographical footprint is pretty large when you compare it to the others, but you've got, let's say, let's pick the top one I have here, option E, you've got 33,000 people, I guess you got 41,000 in my district, North Fargo. That's the way you get the ball moving, equality, parity. So you look at it right now, I guess you got 42,000 people right now, but you're 20% over, and a goodly portion of that rural portion is still South Fargo. So it's still urban. Yep, it's just, Kindred, Mapleton, Castleton, Harwood. I think Horace is not gonna get any smaller. Horace is gonna be as big as Valley City in 10 years. So,
Well, when we had our meeting here a month, Robert Wilson was there, and they just met in the afternoon then, and, when I saw the map right away, I said, the biggest player in this is gonna be the city of Horace. It was obviously when the mayor was picked there, that was the guy most impacted by redistricting. I just didn't even hesitate to think that way.
yep, so, I don't know if we wanna walk through each of these necessarily. I don't know if you had a chance to look at them. I've already picked my favorites, I guess. But that doesn't mean anything more than they're my favorites.
Aaron, was there any, like option Y to me, kind of got, maybe Garner's, North Fargo and D1, D4 is more West Fargo, D2 would be the downtown areas and the urban areas, and then D3 would be the southern part of Fargo, and then it leaves a huge urban space or a huge rural space that I don't know if that takes in the township. Still have a lot of population growth below that, in Frontier and below that. But is there any, to the group here, was there any sense that when we do the districting, are we supposed to try to catch a neighborhood, or does it just, you're just looking at population base, but I know North Siders are a little bit different than South Siders philosophically on some things, or what they might want. And I don't know, the commissioners have been very good about doing what's best for the commission or for the county, it seems like. I don't know that we do get into that ward-like mentality. But when you're doing that, are we just looking at concentration of people or ideology taken into account at all?
We ourselves did not take ideology into account at all. We were looking at numbers, and we were just looking for, especially with those downtown areas, the more city-wide, denser city areas, to look at places to draw lines, which is why we looked at the age of subdivisions, because that gives us an indication of if the population is going to be stable or not.
And then sometimes we get talking about social economics or different or poor neighborhoods or good neighborhoods. Again, that you guys you're not looking that way, you're just looking population.
Correct, yes. And I will add, with the discussion about the population, just the remainder of the county, the population we have to work with is 20,000. So just Fargo and West Fargo take up the rest of the entire population. So that becomes the challenge, because District 5 is going to have to pick up that extra amount of population to get us up to at least that 36,000 number. So that's why we had to look.
Just a question for you on this D1. Do you have any favors in this? Because 1D1's small, 1D1's big, and takes out a lot of the rural districts. So do you like that?
There's one that the indication was that they were gonna push that one district farther to the north, take up Harwood and that. I don't know the population statistics part of that, but just perception is that, we would want, from a rural aspect, push it south farther. Then you're starting to talk in, when you're referring to the neighborhoods like Briarwood and Frontier and them, what they make up, the suburban, let's call it, not suburban, but they're an extension of Fargo.
You have a favorite of the ones they showed?
No, because in every one of them, it's, not going to be in the realm where, the main thing is that rural people or townships that I represent since Don Eckert from Abstract in North Dakota, and it's been a long time, has been, it's been these people from, right south of what I would call the city proper, in those cities like Prairie Rose, Frontier, but real good representatives of the county, but I'm just speaking of the perception of what, the rural township officers, or so to speak, would think.
Chad, do you have a couple you like?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not a fan of gerrymandering and the zigging and zagging, that if you look at the legislative districts, they go 3 blocks to the east, 1 block south, and the intent of that was purposeful, let's be honest about it. So I like to keep the spirit of what is already here. From that, my favorites are option E and option N. I like the idea of option N, I guess, because it gets District 1 further north and again, I don't necessarily have the same philosophy you do, sir, regarding you have to have a rural person because they're the only ones that care about township roads. They're the only ones that care. And I know, but you understand what I'm saying?
Always emphasizing perception.
Yep, exactly.
With you on that.
So I like the idea of N because it has a huge block of North Fargo, and it also can account for very easy changes as Horace, I'm going to pick this word purposefully, explodes in population. So 10 years from now, I'm guessing D1 will remain stable, plus or minus. D2 will remain stable. D5, 4, and 3, I see D3 switching plan south or geographically south. 4 would then continue to Horace, and then D5 would just sort of stabilize. So these two examples match, relatively speaking, compared to the other examples, match more with what we have right now. I think that the county commission is as apolitical as an organization has been in this county. Obviously, I'm a right-wing crazy, and I'm fine with that, but I think we do a good job not bringing politics into this often. I think we do a good job of simply doing our job as administrators and not legislating. So the demographics, which precinct and which district, I like that you didn't take that into account. It's just sort of, here's the way we did it. Here's what boundaries make sense for picking major thoroughfares, and obviously the Red River to our east. I'm not a fan of putting politics into the county commission, and I think you did a good job of ignoring that, in a good way, I mean. Mm-hmm. So those, my two favorites are E and N, if I was to pick two.
Chair? Perhaps Kay said this, and I didn't catch it at the time. When I'm looking at option E doesn't really satisfy our intent, which is to be within 10%. It's got a couple of districts that are more than 10% out of whack. So we're starting in a bad spot if our goal is to try and bring it within 10%, right? So explain a little bit more about that, if you would, please.
Sure. That was actually a request from Robert to try some extreme numbers to see how they would look. And I think maybe at that time we hadn't clarified the percentage spread, whether if we could go that extreme. And maybe Robert, you can add more to that.
Sure. Mr. Chair, members of the board, really the basis that drives how we started to envision these different options is, again, back to the statute. And if you would permit me to just quote one line here, 110703, method of redistricting, election of commissioners at large if redistricting not accomplished at certain times. But this particular point, the redistricting board shall provide for the election of county commissioners as follows. In redistricting a county, the redistricting board shall first attempt to make the districts contiguous following township lines where practical, as regular and compact in form as practical, and as substantially equal in population as possible. So we're in no event shall any commissioner's district vary in population more than 10% from the average population per commissioner. So we really are trying to make these as compact as we can. Started with a basis that former finance director Mr. Montplaisir shared with me that was a maybe a traditional practice was that there was essentially a North Fargo, Central Fargo, Southern Fargo, and then a kind of a West Fargo Horace, and then a rural area. That doesn't mean that that's what it has to be, but he just shared with me that was traditionally how they laid out. So in chatting with Kay and Trevor, we said let's try one in that basic structure. Let's try one where if those are essentially vertical steps, try one that's horizontal steps going from essentially east to west or west to east, and then try other options that fit the criteria that provide for districts that are within that 10% variance. And then I also ask them to use some creativity of what could work, what are we not thinking of, and again they have census blocks that you have to work with. That it's not, there's not an ability to just draw arbitrary lines. You have to work with these census blocks. So again, where the statute says as regular and compact in form as practical, what are some other ways that could work? And I think we have a good variety of options here. One point that I would make is I know there was a comment at Supervisor Godis, you might help me here. I don't know if it was at the municipality meeting or the township meeting, and more of on a kind of a brainstorming session of, could you do something like a hub and spoke, where you reached out from the core out to various areas of the county, and I came back and I asked our GIS folks, is that possible? Could we try to come up with an option that accomplishes that? And because they have to, the feedback I got was that because they have to work with census blocks, if you did that, you really would not come back with something that is regular and compact as described in the statute that it has to be. So the reason that we tried to bring the number of options forward that we did is we didn't want to overwhelm the board and bring 20 options at you, but we also wanted to be as creative as possible and give you different looks to work with that suit your preferences as a board.
But I think that, so Mike Montplaisir and I have known each other for some time. We've had that hub and spoke conversation that was looked at years ago, and that would virtually guarantee 5 commissioners from downtown Fargo. That's the reality. Well, I want to have equal representation. So if you had this pinwheel going, well, guess what's going to happen? They're all going to, if your concern is, we don't have anybody outside the urban core, you want to guarantee it, that's how you do it. Because then you'll
I know that Barnes County has that kind of setup, and they're comfortable with it, and they, it often ranges 2 or 3 of them from outside of the city proper.
Yeah, I would.
So and I will admit I don't know exactly how it looks, but I know that that's what has happened.
Yeah, I would be.
And that's it was at that meeting where you brought up there are different ways to do it.
Yep.
All these look like they're sound in their preparation, and they're compact, contiguous. They're looking at what it has been and what it will be. That there's been a lot of work going into it, I will admit. But ideally, from a rural township, you want to move one district farther to the south or something like that. But that would make it less contiguous.
So what about something like that? So I'm looking at, I just did a scribble on N, and I think this is probably going to wreck your math, by the way, because I think the population's pretty dense. But if we were to encompass this core into District 3, my guess is it's going to set your numbers off, or it'll fail. But I think what I'm hearing you say is, let's remove, Horace is going to be 25,000 people by the time I get older. But so I think that's going to be what it's going to be. You're always going to have that urban. But if you were to take that block there sort of fill it in where you've got, again, I think keeping the spirit of what we have without going crazy, and then you've got a little more to the north too. That's sort of my happy space. If I was to pick one of these, that's where I'm, and that's option.
You're already at 38,000, so if you go any further, you're gonna do the percentage.
And that's the problem with it, Mayor, is that my scribble, I think, is gonna pop in. You know, it's so easy to,
You've got
you
a lot
know,
of people on.
yeah, I know, I scribble it in, well, guess what, that's 7,000 people, Chad. What are you doing, dude? You know, it's gonna be, trying to remove some of the city it's gonna throw the numbers out.
Concerned about option E, that D1 is plus 11%, is that 10% margin we're talking about, or is that?
Well, that's the,
That was his question, Mayor.
yeah, 11-07-03 subdivision 1, and Robert read it a little earlier, says, in redistricting a county, the board shall first attempt to make them contiguous following township lines where practicable, as regular and compact in form as possible, and as substantially equal in population as possible. And then this sentence, in no event shall any commissioner's district vary in population more than 10% from the average. And any variance from the average population shall be justified in the statement filed pursuant to this section. So I don't know how we can go beyond 10% with that statutory direction, which binds us a little bit, obviously. If you think that a community is going to be growing a lot, then you might want to, I mean, one thought is that you undersize that now with the idea that it's going to fill up over the next 10 years, and then you'll be somewhat more, during the course of that 10 years, be somewhat more equal in population. But the first time you do that, you're not going to be equal in population. It's going to be somewhat undersized. So you're sacrificing today for tomorrow, I suppose. But in any case, I don't know how we approve something that is, for a district that has more than 10% difference from the average. This is a little different thing, but as long as my microphone's hot. We're going to have a second meeting at some point, is what I understand our intention is here. And so the idea of the second meeting, I think, is to allow for public input. So I have two thoughts in that regard, and I'm just tossing them out there for comment. One, Kate talked a little bit when she first got up about how she came up with these varying options, but I don't recall seeing that written anywhere here. And if we were going to be putting this out to the public for them to take a look at, it might be beneficial if there was a short description of how you came up with those options so the public could see those too and understand the basis for that. That's just a suggestion on my part. Mm-hmm. And the second one, and I don't quite know what to do with it, is if somebody from the public has a better idea, what do they do about it? Because I have a feeling if somebody walked in here at our next meeting and said, I've got a better idea and here's what it is, we're not going to be prepared to vote on it at that time if that's the first time we hear about it. We don't know if their population numbers are correct or not. So the question might be, if somebody has a better idea in the public, is there something they can do to engage GIS to come up with some numbers? Or if so, is there some filter we should put in place so we don't have 20 better ideas?
So Mr. Burdick had those points, great points, by the way. I think that's what the public hearing is. So I would encourage this committee to set a public hearing sooner rather than later. And at that meeting is when those ideas would be presented. And that would still allow us enough time before the calendar year were to expire. Now, let's say someone, you know, and I think, frankly, I think I have my answer here already, my preconceived notion. But if that person was to show up with a better idea, that would allow us as the filter, I'm going to use your word, Mr. Burdick, to say, okay, this seems plausible or reasonable with our team in the room. You could then go, I mean, let's say someone shows up and whatever, draw a head of Mickey Mouse. This is what it should be. Well, you can intuitively, maybe you better, you can intuitively look at that Mickey Mouse picture and go, well, that's defies math because I did these things. I pushed and pulled them. My perception is you're going to be 25% over here. So you can falsify that immediately. But if someone's to show up with a picture of Daffy Duck and you look at it and go, wow, I didn't think about that. That may be a plausible solution. that would allow this committee to say, let's investigate Daffy Duck. Because if our GIS team members say, yep, this might actually work, we then again have time to look at that. So that's how I would address your two concerns, Mr. Burdick.
Commissioner Peterson?
Yes.
We can certainly entertain the idea of making this available, I mean, on a public GIS application where you can roll over your mouse and see those population numbers by block. If you wanted that as an
I
option.
love the idea. Does that burden you in any way, though?
No.
Okay, because that would be amazing if that's possible.
If you want to get that out there in advance of this meeting, because I think that will probably save you having to make that explanation
Okay.
at that point, because it's available, you can roll the mouse over and somebody can do some simple math and say, okay, you know, this totals this number.
Okay, my concern, again, I'll use the word filter because it's wonderful, is my concern was you'd get bombarded, you know, with 2,500 people calling you saying, work this solution, that solution. I don't want to put you in that position because that's going to set you up to fail and create basically chaos. But if you could do that, if you can provide them that map where someone could actually do their due diligence ahead of that next meeting, that would be amazing, because then they could do the Daffy Duck and Mickey Mouse themselves, bring us a PDF and say, here's the way the map works. Am I oversimplifying that?
No.
Okay.
I currently have a web application I just put together for Deanne in the election office that is along these same lines, needs
Wow.
to look at census blocks. So I just need to flip that to the public side in
Okay.
effect, if that is the request of the board.
That'd be great if there's no security issues. I'd check with IT. I mean, I'm sure there aren't, but.
The block information is already out there.
Oh, okay.
It's just numbers. It's public information from the Census Bureau.
Perfect, Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Chair, just to the point of generating public involvement in this, you know, that was one of the reasons why not only are we holding this meeting here as statutorily required, but we've got this as an agenda item on the commission agenda later this afternoon. And I had a meeting with Mayor Peterson last week because he indicated he was not going to be able to attend this. And the point is to get it to you as redistricting board members, and then to use you essentially to push that out to the public, and whether that's the GIS platform on our website or our social media, press releases, information distribution network. Where you know that this is a starting point, not a one-shot deal. So I think that's very much what we're looking for here, is these ideas and where you think it would be most effective to share this information to get additional feedback going into that public hearing.
Perfect, Mr. Wilson. Committee members, we're pushing against an hour here. I think we could probably talk about this endlessly. I know I could, actually. But what are the wishes of the committee? My suggestion is to set a meeting in the next 2, max 3 weeks for a public hearing.
What date are you thinking?
I don't know that I know. My gut's telling me the 29th is now full, Mr. Wilson, correct? Friday?
I am pulling my calendar here.
I would say Wednesday or Thursday of next, actually, I would say Thursday of next week, the 28th or 29th.
I don't think that gives us.
For the public hearing, I don't think that will give us 10 days to get it published.
I go 28th or 29th?
Well, I don't know how often the forum publishes these things.
Oh, I'm
Every
sorry.
Wednesday. So the
Okay.
soonest we could notice it would be the Wednesday, the 27th.
So then I would say, how about November 9th or 10th?
I think either, as I'm counting days, if that gives us, Taylor, you said the 20th would be the published date?
The 27th.
27th.
That's why I'm skipping that first week in November. So my proposal is November 9th.
What time in the night?
Morning.
Morning? You have it late morning, or is it early?
Yes, it doesn't matter.
For me,
Supervisor? Does that work for
Well, I'm
you?
a retired teacher, so my schedule is usually open, except this crop adjusting job that I got is turned into a full-time, at times nightmare. So
Now, when my mom and
my
dad were,
days,
Well,
my days are, you set a date and I will do everything in my power to be here.
late morning, November 9th. Mr. Wilson?
11 o'clock again, as we met here.
Okay.
All right.
Do we need a motion? I think we probably do, don't we? We're setting a public hearing date, so we should have a motion and a vote.
so moved.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Moved and second, November 9th at 11 o'clock be the date of the public hearing. Any discussion? If not, Taylor, roll call, please.
Mayor Mahoney, Supervisor Godus,
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson,
Yes, please.
and Mr. Burdick.
Yes.
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson, is there anything else for the committee?
Nothing more for the committee. Open to any questions, comments, feedback you may have for me.
Wonderful. Committee members, any questions?
Out of curiosity, any of these plans affect the incumbents sitting in those positions right now?
So what you'll note is the little yellow dot.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
Yep, no, but that's what that is. So that's where they currently reside.
All
I
right.
did find one, I thought. Yeah, one of the ones I liked, actually, the N caused a conflict in District 3, but we can adjust little stuff. So yeah, that's the key, is just the little yellow dot. Any further questions or concerns, committee members? If not, I would look for a motion to adjourn, please. Second?
Second.
Moved and second, any discussion? If not, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. We stand adjourned. See you in 3 weeks. Sincerely, thank you both for making this so easy, because I can't not even imagine the nightmare scenario this would be if we did not have your skill set. This would just be chaos. Me drawing with a Sharpie with various blocks and then asking you to do math. So thank you
It's
much.
been done. Yeah.
Board
You're
members, thank
welcome.
you.